So, um, today was Tuesday, and the class just finished. I mean, not just finished, like class was over like 4 hours ago, and I was staying on campus trying to do some extra work, but got exhausted. So I went to the library to do some extra research, and I would say it was pretty good. Yeah. So last week we went through the societal spectacle, um, and as a expansion of the discourse, for this week we read two critiques of technology, written by Finberg, and which compares Habermas and Marcuse and their view on technologies. So basically, this is how it went. Um, the main point for their discussion is that whether technology itself is neutral or is it not neutral. And Habermas's argument was technology is somewhat neutral because technology is not something that is ex that exists exterior of human nature, but it is innate. Um, because it is a project, generic project of serving this the species of humankind for its comfort. So somehow he's making a relationship to the human nature of desire for um, um, demanding their daily life comfort. However, Marcuse says that it is true that technology um, aims at comfort and efficiency, but it is not um, neutral because the context it is getting realized is very socio-historically specific. So let's take an example of efficiency. Habermas's argument is very, I would say, abstract because we all agree that efficiency itself is small input and big output, right? But Marcuse is trying to say, well, it is true that efficiency, um, it has a definition of small input and big output, but we have to ask the question of who's putting what on where for whom. So it's getting specificalized, it's getting elaborated, or it's getting sophisticated as Marcuse continues his argument. So that was pretty much the core of it. And Binberg tries to get in more deep into it. And there was a lot of details that I wasn't able to follow because for academic purpose, um, there are certain methodologies that the author has to take, and it is not architecture's, what is that word? Duty. Fuck. And it is not architecture's duty to be a philosopher, but to get the perspective from the philosophers. So I wasn't really getting deep into all of it. And there was a theory about media, which came from Habermas. And Habermas basically, as a Frankfurt schooler, or I don't know how to put it, um, Frankfurt School claims that there's a instrumental rationality, 도구적 이성, and that pretty much um what's the word? Donation? No, no. 지배적인? Dominant, yes. there was so again, instrumental rationality was dominant in modern society, and that was the core value that capitalism um is intertwined with. But there is also communicative rationality, which aims at mutual understanding and social communication. Uh, so communicative rationality uh, is present on real life world, which individual can communicate with each other. But as the technology develops, there's media comes in, and by media, it doesn't mean like the television or Instagram or any other devices. By media, it means that a way people exchange their values. For example, administration, transportation, laws, and all this kind of system that we are living in is called media. And media related communication is not mutual understanding, but it aims at performing a successful system. For example, if we were to take an example of transportation system deals with a lot of people. If we think of commuting time, tons of people just getting in, getting out. Um, so nobody doubts the transportation system, but transportation technology really deals with great amount of people without discussion. So it's really one-sided communication, so not mutual understanding. And laws, money, administration acts all the same way. And Finberg, the author, tries to expand his discourse from media to technology. Just like media related to communication, technology related communication is really the same. So technology itself can be a media, and as it is one-sided communication, it presents the value of control in totalitarian perspective. Um, and here we have to expand our perspective to architecture, and architecture itself is also a media, because if we design a building, that means we are basically designing the people's behavior, where you should go for your bathroom, where you should go for your food, how are you going to get into the working place. So architecture itself is a media, and we have to say, so basically this course was expanded from media, technology to architecture. But Habermas said that technology is neutral, which means media can be neutral and architecture can be neutral. But Marcuse said, no, it's not. It is related to very specific social historical context. So as an architect, as we proceed on the design process, we have to see the way we are trying to manipulate people's behavior um, on which sphere of normative that our design intention lies. And reading this kind of big context really it is easy for me to fall in for it emotionally, because it is not something that we deal with in our everyday life. So we see this big thing and we just fall for it very emotionally. But as Kunwi, my professor, mentioned, architecture's duty is not to fall into the philosophy emotionally, but to stay out of it, but get some perspective out of it. You know? So that was that. And we have to take architecture as a media, and we have to see what kind of context it's in. And this there's a unique characteristic of architecture is that architecture is actually occupying a specific geological position. So it can be positioned in Singapore, it can be positioned in Seoul, and in Seoul, like where? In the beach, in the left or right, in the mountains, near Cheongwade. So architecture occupies a physical world, and that could be a geological specific context that architecture has to take consideration to. Mm. So when we are talking about we have for this design studio, we have to design a industrial complex. And we have to I have to choose which industry I'm gonna be designing. And that has to have some BSM type of diagram, which has the whole process of manufacturing, but I am thinking of relating it to more to the industrialist intention or urbanist intention in Singapore's context, because well, those two. Okay, anyway, step out of it. So the process diagram is necessary, and then within that process diagram, um, we're gonna set up a how do we say that? 방향성? Direction, obviously. I'm not really feeling well right now, so I'm gonna set a direction of the norm and then incorporate that into design. And I'm not really sure how that's gonna work, but so I've been looking at the industries in Jurong. Jurong is basically a place in Singapore where Lee Kuan Yew, the first president of Singapore, who developed Singapore as a city-state country. Um, that Jurong is the first place where he put all the industry in, and there was a very enthusiastic and analytic city plan that he has purpose of 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 getting Singapore industrialized back in 1960s. So we're gonna take a look into the urban plan of 1960s Jurong, and then on which location, which kind of industry was deployed, and then how the greenery and the residential um conditions were placed. And from there, we're gonna take that context into 2020 and try to um critique the context of 1960s and then applying it to 2020. It sounds really obvious, but well, I don't know. So I look into some plannings, urban plannings, and now I have to do some work on which industry I'm gonna be working on, and then try to see how the procedures goes on that industry, and then try to see how the greeneries in the residential area were related. Yeah. I'm not really sure like um how big this project will be, because Kunwi, our professor, is really open to anything, and he really want individuals to work on their interest and develop their thesis. So I'm kind of lost. I'm kind of lost. Was that it? There was a funny, interesting point that Kunwi made today. Eh, um that architectures are technologies. As a technologist, we are on the side of pro technology, and this is a stance of Steve Jobs. The normal mass of people don't really want what they want, and as technologies, we produce their demands, their desires, and then this is the product that they desire. And architecture is on that side, so I think the reason why he brought up the text of the spectacle of society and the critique of technology is that to have a balanced viewpoint, not to fall into it. So yeah. And he also mentioned that this type of designing, developing is itself in the same process of um proving scientific facts or having philosophical developments, because in science we develop the hypothesis by proving um proving that this is not false, thus is true, you know. So I guess he's trying to incorporate that sort of design thinking process into the studio. And so far it is a research studio, so we haven't done a lot of work, but still I have to get ahead because I know that my design ability right now is far behind from this M.Arch I students and M.Arch II students. So I have to really push myself further. So today's Tuesday, and by Wednesday and Thursday, I'm gonna do most of my research and try to come up, elaborate them. And then for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm gonna come up with some sort of design thesis, I guess. Yeah, that was pretty much it for today.